I sat motionless, as if paralyzed, while my wife of 25 years explained to me why she was serving me with divorce papers. I could only hear half of what she was saying. Gary, are you listening to me? You look like you're in a daze. Pay attention, okay? This is important. I'm sorry. I was distracted for a moment. What were you talking about? The terms are simple. There is nothing to dispute. I'm not asking for anything. Do you hear that? Absolutely nothing. You keep the house, the cars, and all the money in the bank. If you sign this, it's all over in 3 months. I didn't know what to say. Marcy and I had been married since high school. We raised 2 beautiful twin daughters. Cindy and Sandy went to Columbia University to study international banking. We had a nice house in the suburbs, and we both drove Volvos. Marcy had her own credit cards and cell phone. I never denied her anything. I never cheated on her, never verbally or physically abused her. She never showed that she was unhappy or complained about anything. There was no way I could have prepared myself for this. I never noticed anything was wrong. Maybe that was the problem. I wasn't paying attention. I understand the mechanics of divorce, Marcy, but can you tell me why? It's probably too late to do anything about it, but I'd like to know why. Marcy sort of collapsed in the kitchen chair. It was obvious that she didn't want to discuss the reasons and hoped I would just sign the papers and let her go. Just tell me briefly, Marcy, what the hell did I do wrong? You didn't do anything wrong, Gary. You were the perfect husband. Sometimes I hoped you'd screw up and I'd have an excuse to leave, but you never did. You were great at raising the kids and getting them through college. You always gave me everything I wanted, even if sometimes I was unreasonable. You bought me a beautiful house. My parents love you. Don't ever think you did anything wrong, because you didn't. She looked all of 45. She had a nice complexion and perfect hair. It was light brown and glistened in the sunlight. She jogged regularly and her body was perfectly toned and tanned. On weekdays she looked like a Land's End girl, but when she needed to, she was glamorous. Marcy was as perfect as I was, as she claimed. I just couldn't figure out what was behind it. I'm sorry, it doesn't make sense. There has to be a reason. You can't just say, it's okay, and then walk away. There has to be a reason. Gary, I'm trying to do this in a way that doesn't hurt your feelings or make me look bad. Why don't we just leave it at that? No, Gary. I found someone else. He's a real estate developer. He has a beautiful apartment overlooking the river and a beautiful black Mercedes. He's handsome, rich, and madly in love with me. You were and still are a grocery clerk at the supermarket. I am not demeaning your job because you have always taken care of us and always earned enough to keep the family comfortable. However, you will always be a grocery clerk. I wanted more than that. I couldn't imagine you would do that for me. You were always happy with what you were doing, and I didn't see you trying to improve. It was painful. I was the manager of the grocery department and she still thought of me as a clerk. When I had a chance to advance my career and move out of town, I turned down the opportunity to keep my family together, and now look how I was rewarded. It was painful, but not worth mentioning. Does this rich, good-looking guy have a name? Clayton Manning, he's the president of Keystone Development Company. How long have you known him? 6 months. You slept with him? Marcy sat up straight in the chair. Her eyes darted around the room and finally she looked me in the face. Yes, I was trying to avoid the subject, but since you insist on it, yes, you were still married. Yes, I was still married. I cheated on you. I was an adulteress, I was a. Are you happy now? I sat for a while, then reached over and took the divorce papers, signed in 3 places, initialed 2 and handed them to her across the table. I think he's better than I am. Sorry to disappoint you. I got up and as I was leaving the room, Marcy screamed. Hell no, that's not the reason. He wasn't better than you, just different. Don't you dare walk away believing that, Gary. Don't you dare. By then, I was out the door. I was so absorbed in my work and hobbies that I didn't even notice Marcy gradually moving her things out of the house. By the time she handed me the papers, she had moved most of her clothes and personal belongings into Clayton's apartment. She had thoughtfully left all the wedding and family photos behind so I could enjoy them in her absence. When I got back to the house, she was gone. Her Volvo was still in the driveway, and I figured she wouldn't need it anymore. She had left a power of attorney on the kitchen table to sell the house and car. I spent the rest of the night getting rid of the beer that was in the refrigerator. By then I realized that the job was done. There was no turning back and I didn't want to. Marcy was gone and would be gone the next morning. I called work and took 3 months of overdue vacation. They were always nagging me to take time off, so there was no problem. I had plenty of vacation and sick leave. I quickly called the girls at school and briefly explained that we were breaking up, but refused to give them any other information. They wanted to call Marcy, but I didn't have her new phone number. I had 3 months to pull myself together and decide what I was going to do. I disconnected my landline. I changed my cell phone number and canceled the one Marcy had. The Volvo dealer gave me the low book value of Marcy's car. I had a high school friend, Terry Davis, who was now a real estate broker. He agreed to sell the house without a listing, at a low price and with a quick settlement to be sure. I canceled all my credit cards and opened new bank accounts. I cashed in my life insurance policies. It was time to put the house in order. I went around the house and collected everything that could possibly belong to my wife. There was enough stuff to fill 3 trash bags. I packed the girls' personal belongings into boxes and took them to the closet next to the house. I spent 3 hours sorting through family photos. I put all of the girls' pictures in a box for them. All the pictures of Marcy went in the trash can. It was stupid, I know, but I didn't care. The main problem I faced was a lack of direction. I had no idea what I would do after 3 months. Would I stay here, or would I leave? Would I keep working or find something new? I had 2 hobbies. I collected coins, mostly cents with an Indian head on them. They were easy to collect and readily available. I bought and sold them on eBay and enjoyed it. My second passion was geocaching. It gave me an excuse to get outside and get some exercise. Marcy hated this activity because of the ticks, poison ivy, and having to walk. I didn't see how I could make a living doing any of these activities. When I wasn't busy with my hobbies, I spent time with the Wall Street Journal. Cindy and Sandy gave me a subscription every year at Christmas. I had no interest in stocks and bonds, but I read everything about farm commodities. I knew more about sugar, wheat, and corn than most market analysts. Of course, it was just a hobby. I had no money invested in any of it. I have researched all available information about Keystone Development and Clayton Manning. Terry Davis was able to get more information about Clayton and his current project than I could. He cross-checked some of the information with a friend of his who works at a local commercial bank. I couldn't wait to see what he came up with. It's been 7 weeks and all that time I hadn't seen or heard from Marcy. The girls called every week, but I hadn't heard from their mother either. I had a feeling they were on my side, but Marcy was their mother and I'm sure they had to be supportive to some degree. I had a few yard sales and unloaded a ton of stuff. I left enough furniture in the house that it would be good to show the potential buyers. Marcy and Clayton's picture was published in the society section of the Sunday paper. They were at a political rally drinking wine with local figures. A few more weeks passed. Terry made me an offer on the house. It was pretty low compared to the appraisal, but they wanted to close the deal in 60 days, which would be perfect. He had an interesting biography of Clayton and wanted to talk about it. We made an appointment to meet for lunch. I decided to get out of the house for a while. I needed a break. Hayes Mountain was one of the best places in the area for hiking and geocaching. Unfortunately, I found all the geocaches there. However, there were 3 landmarks on the mountain. Landmarks are reference points placed throughout the country by the government. Surveyors and real estate developers use these landmarks to determine property boundaries. They come in many forms, but are usually metal rods driven into concrete. Finding landmarks is an interesting side game for serious geocachers. I decided that today I would manage to find all 3 landmarks on the mountain. In addition to the GPS, I would have to bring a metal detector with me. Finding a piece of rebar in the woods isn't easy, and I needed all the help I could get. The GPS would lead me to the approximate area. Much of Hayes Mountain was part of the Madison Land Trust. It was approaching 2,000 acres, but they were constantly looking to add to it. Subdivisions and industrial parks took up most of the vacant land, and the trust had to survive on donations. Next to the trust's parking lot was an orchard and farmhouse with a large for sale sign. After parking the car, I walked over to the fence by the orchard just to have a look. It was embarrassing to think that in a little while this beautiful estate would probably be bulldozed to make way for construction. Are you going to buy it or just look at it? I couldn't help but smile at the old man walking toward me. He was dressed in overalls, but instead of a straw hat, he was wearing a John Deere baseball cap. He introduced himself as John Smurd. Well, if I had $1 million, I'd gladly take it from you. We both laughed at that. You won't have a problem selling it, will you? Well, I have people interested, but I try to hang on as long as possible. Why? I was hoping the land trust would buy it, but they don't seem to have the money. They want to leave the fruit trees in their natural state, which is fine with me. It doesn't please the developers who want to plant everything. I think it will be a great addition to what we have now. How can a land trust compete with the big companies? I've offered them a better deal. It's even worth $1 million in the listing, but I'll give it to the trust for $600,000. Trouble is, they don't seem to be able to raise that amount right now. If they can't do it in 90 days, I'll have to take the option away from that damn real estate developer. That asterisk calls me every week and I'm getting tired of him. An option is not a sale, is it? No, the buyer purchases from me a promise to sell him the land in the next 6 months for $1 million. He pays $100,000 for the option. If he can't raise $1 million, he loses the option payment. It's a good deal for me, but I don't want him to get it. He has the $1 million under lock and key, so he'll be safe. The problem is that he needs to get all 6 properties for the deal to go through. That's why he's willing to pay more than the place is worth. What happens if you don't sell him the option? He's going to lose his and more. Since the land trust can't raise the money, it looks like Keystone has a sure shot. However, if he doesn't get that lot, he'll lose the whole deal, including the money he paid for the options on the other 5 lots. That's probably around $1 million. His supporters will walk away and leave him hanging. If I had the money, I'd help you. Yeah, they all say that. We had another laugh and I left for my walk. I found his mention of Keystone interesting. The landmarks were within a mile of each other. That is as the crow flies on the mountain. It was twice that. The first 2 were fairly easy to find. They were standard surveyor's markers. The last marker was much older and much harder to find. When I finally came upon it, I found a small brick monument with a bronze plaque attached to it. It was buried under years of leaves and debris. I took a picture of it to post with the magazine. In that moment, my life changed. The metal detector was still on. As I stepped away from the marker, it started beeping. It was faint, but it was definitely there. I put on my headset and began scanning the area about 10 feet south of the landmark. Finally, I pointed it at the target and carefully began probing. You don't usually find metal in the middle of the woods. In 5 minutes I had a small iron box. It was wrapped in a heavily oiled piece of canvas. There was a lot of rust on the surface, but the box itself was sturdy. The lock was of heavy bronze, but it still did its job. Quite often finds of this nature on public lands are considered treasures and should be turned over to the government or some historical agency. For some reason, that option didn't make sense to me today. I put the box in my bag and headed home. On the way home, I couldn't help but think about what was in my little box. Gold coins were the first thing that came to mind. Maybe it was full of important documents from the Civil War earlier. The possibilities were limited only by the size of the container. I cleaned off the kitchen table, pulled out the Foster, and began to study my find. I didn't want to destroy the lock, but I couldn't figure out how to open it any other way. I had no idea if the mechanism inside the lock was still functioning. I decided that the lock would have to be sacrificed. My bolt cutter made quick work of the task. Inside the box was another piece of oiled canvas. I carefully unwrapped it and found 12 pennies. Why would anyone want to bury 12 pennies? These were not regular everyday pennies, but old large cents. The newest date is 1814. The oldest was 1793. Despite the age, you could easily read the date on each one. Surprisingly, there was no green corrosion on them, which is common on old copper coins. I never got into collecting large cents as I felt I could get more for my money by buying newer cents with Indian heads. However, I did have a book my grandfather left me called The Quirks of the Penny. It talked about the different types and varieties of large cent stamps. I found it boring since I didn't own any of them. It had been sitting on a shelf gathering dust for almost 30 years. Tonight it would find a good use. I sat up until dawn with my grandfather's book in a magnifying glass. My scanner took beautiful high-resolution photos of each coin. Every crack and scratch on the stamp was perfectly visible and the condition of each coin was obvious. I slept until noon. I called work just to see how things were going. They told me that Phil Williams, one of the company executives, had asked about me. They didn't know anything else. I had other concerns, so I didn't pursue it further. It would take a trip to the bank to get a safe deposit box. After spending a few hours on the internet, I realized that my pennies were worth several $1 million. It wasn't about age, it was about their condition and the varieties of stamps. I now understood why drug dealers had to go to such lengths to launder money. There was no easy way to turn my precious coins into hard cash. It would have to be hard work. While having breakfast at IHOP, I noticed another picture in the paper of Marcy and Clayton being pictured at the opening of a new art gallery. She was wearing a black cocktail dress and holding a wine or champagne glass. They were both smiling at the camera looking at the photo. The next step became clear in my mind. After receiving the safe, I called John Smurd and asked him to hold off on making any decisions about the land for a few days. He seemed satisfied with the call. I went to the Land Trust office and asked to be told how to make a donation to the organization. They were very happy to help me. We were 4 weeks away from the final divorce. For some reason, I felt like that deadline was very important. I spent the rest of the day researching coin dealers and auction houses. I wasn't looking for advertisements, I was looking for lawsuits. Eventually, I settled on Towers and Burns in New York City. They had a solid financial position and seemed to be able to handle controversial sales without much trouble or publicity. I made an appointment with them on Monday afternoon. I called the girls and asked them to keep Monday morning free so we could have lunch together. The facade of the Towers and Burns office was a chic showroom. There was plenty of glass and light, the display cases contained the standard variety of collectibles, and the walls were hung with other numismatic paraphernalia. I gave my last name and was escorted back to a much less attractive part of the building. Welcome to New York, Mr. Simmons. I understand you have some interesting cops to show us. Is this your first time in the city? I sat down in the straight-backed chair across from James Towers. His picture was in the advertisement, but he looked about 10 years older now. Thank you. My daughters attend Columbia University, so I've been here before, but never on business. I'm not questioning your coin knowledge, but don't you have someone on your staff who specializes in early copper coins? If so, I think their presence would be helpful. I'm not that sensitive, and I think that would be a good idea too. He leaned over to the intercom on his desk. Marie, have Cookson come into my office. Maurice Cookson had published several guides to large cents and half cents. I was pleased with his accessibility. Mr. Cookson also looked older than his photographs. I guess no one likes to look old. Gentlemen, I have 12 special coins that I'm offering for sale. I hope to sell 4 of them today and keep the 5th for your consideration. The other 7 I'll save for later. If today goes well, I'll offer them to you as well. I know it seems unbelievable, but I think 6 of the coins will fall under conditional census status. I'm sure Mr. Cookson will determine if I'm close or not. Since census condition cents don't come on the market very often. I was hoping you would be interested. Where did those coins come from? My grandfather left them to me when he died. I don't mean to insult Mr. Simmons, but this story is hard to believe. What can you show us? I spread 4 pictures on the table. Each of them showed the obverse and reverse of one of the coins I was offering today. They were about 5 times the normal size and very clear. James and Maurice looked at each photograph for several minutes. Finally, James spoke up. What did you come up with for these 4? A quick look at the results of recent auctions led me to believe that it could fetch about $1 million. 3 for it. I thought it was 1 to 1, but your figure is not out of the question. Maurice really knew his pennies. I only want $800,000 for the lot, but it has to be treated in a special way. James leaned back in his chair and smiled. I think we can handle it. How special are you talking about? I had a letter I took from the land trust explaining how to donate land. I gave it to Mr. Towers, along with an advertisement for John Smurd's orchard. I want you to buy this piece of land and donate it to the Madison Land Trust. The price is $600,000. You'll get a very nice tax deduction and become humanitarians. I'll take the rest of the money in cash. Give us a moment, please. James and Maurice retreated to the other end of the room. After a few minutes, Maurice left. James returned to the table. Do you have any coins with you? Yes, I also have a 5th coin that I would like to keep with you. Mr. Cookson returned to the table with a purple Crown Royal bag. This time he spoke. We are willing to honor your terms on the first part of the deal and hope you can honor ours on the second part. He then dumped the purple packet on the desktop. It turned out to contain almost 100 different coins, mostly gold, but some silver coins as well. The retail price of this collection is around $300,000. For a number of reasons that we won't discuss, it's difficult for us to sell them. However, you won't have a problem. I understand that you have sold coins on eBay before, is that correct? I simply nodded. These coins inherited from your grandfather should sell easily and we will both benefit. I assure you, you won't have any difficulties. This was said with a slight wink. I thought about it for a while and agreed. I handed the 4 pennies to Mr. Towers and we all shook hands. Now, Mr. Simmons, tell us about this 5th coin. I held the photograph in my hand and looked at Mr. Cookson. Name the highest rated 1793 strawberry you've ever seen. I've never seen one, but I think the highest score is fair 12. I rated this picture an 8, but I'm not a professional. He wasn't looking at the picture, he was looking at my face when I said that both of them were trying to see the photograph at the same time. Cookson was smiling broadly, and I could see dollar signs in Towers' eyes. How much? Best offer if you can figure out how to pay me. Would you like a cup of coffee, Mr. Simons? Of course, black would be just fine. They both left the room with the picture and a few minutes later a young woman brought me a cup of coffee. Mr. Rao, Towers will be with you in a few minutes. He has some phone calls to make. Will you be okay? I nodded in agreement and started the coffee. 30 minutes had passed when Towers returned to the room with an absolutely beautiful woman. She had dark eyes, raven hair, and what appeared to be Middle Eastern looks. I guessed her to be no more than 30. She was well dressed and had a commanding demeanor. For a second I thought I recognized her, but I couldn't remember where from. Hello, my name is Letitia Rothberg. Do you have a passport, Mr. Simmons? Her voice was deep but still feminine. Yes. Good, we'll be traveling to JFK shortly to set up a new offshore bank account for you. Do you have anything to give to Mr. Towers? I gave James a 1793 strawberry and he looked like a little boy at Christmas. Thank you, he said as he left the room. We never agreed on a price, but I still had 7 coins that Towers wanted. Mr. Towers agreed to hold the small bag of coins until I returned. An hour later, Letitia and I were already sitting on a plane to the Cayman Islands. She hardly spoke at all. When we arrived at the airport, several photographers were eager to take her picture. She looked annoyed, yet she was smiling sweetly. I had no idea what the reason for this interest was. It was my first-class flight and it was over too quickly. A bright yellow mini SUV was waiting for us at the terminal. My hostess didn't hesitate to pull her skirt up to her hips as she slid into the driver's seat. To my embarrassment, she caught me sneaking glances at her tanned legs. She seemed amused by my discomfort. 20 minutes later we parked on the lower level of a mid-sized condominium building. Letitia Rothberg owned the whole building, but she used the top floor as her personal apartment. Can I get you anything, Mr. Simmons? A beer would be nice. The sight of her leaving the room was as good as the flash of her foot in the terminal. It's not in my nature to fawn over young women, but Letitia Rothberg was special. We went out on a small balcony overlooking the ocean. It was beautiful out there, but the wind was too strong for my taste. I guess she was trying to impress me with the grandiosity of the place. It was beautiful, but I was more interested in the new bank account I was getting. You don't talk very much, Mr. Simmons. Surely you have a few questions you'd like answered. It seems strange to me that a woman of her class and position would drink beer from a bottle. I could imagine her sipping champagne or martinis, but not beer. Such a figure would not last her long if she continued to. I usually think it's best to wait, but I guess you could tell me why we needed to come here to open a bank account. It's a simple, safe, and secure place to get money. I think it will work well for you. It's just 1 coin. Yes, but you have 7 more. I'm sorry, but that still seems excessive. To my delight, we returned to the house sheltered from the wind. Can you accept this? I brought you here to be my sex slave for a few days. I have to admit that the unexpected comment made me smile. I automatically knew it was nonsense, but I still found humor in it. She had a sense of humor. She looked good and she was rich. What more could a man dream of? If only I were 10 years younger. It's no good teasing an old man. We both laughed lightly at the situation. Come on, Mr. Simmons, let's go get some fresh lobsters for dinner. We finished our long necks and headed out the door. The restaurant and food were great. I didn't really like the wine the hostess chose, but I tried to be gracious. It didn't work. What's wrong with the wine, Mr. Simmons? Was I that obvious? I'm sorry, it was unintentional, a kind of reflex action. When I was 18 I got drunk on cheap white wine like a dog. I've never been so miserable before or since. Every time I smell or taste white wine I vomit. I can't explain it. It's good wine, but don't worry about it. 5 minutes later we had 2 cold long necks. Oddly enough, there was little conversation during the meal. At the end, we each had a fruit sorbet and drank coffee. Tell me about yourself. Are you married? Do you have children? What do you do for a living? We have all night and I'm dying to know what brought us together. It's a lot of questions. I have 2 daughters. Both of them are at Columbia University studying international banking or something like that. I don't really know. I just pay the tuition. It's interesting. I have a master's degree from Columbia University and I'm one of their guest lecturers. I got to meet both of them. Have you seen them this morning? We had lunch together. They hate it when I make them skip class. You must have gotten married early since you have 2 girls in college. That sounds like a phrase a guy could use. I felt comfortable with this Mediterranean beauty. I could have talked to her all night. I am currently estranged from my wife. That's a strange word. I never thought I could use it. She left me for a rich wheeler dealer. I think he builds shopping malls or business complexes. Anyway, he's got a fancy car and a big apartment. She told me she's decided to switch. The divorce will be final in about 4 weeks. That's a stupid reason to leave a good marriage. I guess everything was fine until she met this guy. I guess she was never happy with my choice of work. I had several opportunities to advance my career, but she refused to move forward. I wasn't thrilled about it, but decided it was necessary to save the marriage. Now I feel like nothing. And what do you do? There was an awkward pause. How do you tell a beautiful, rich, successful woman that you work as a grocery manager at a supermarket? She noticed my discomfort and reacted accordingly. It's not important. We can talk about it later. No, it's okay, I'm not ashamed of what I do. It's just that being a supermarket grocery manager isn't the kind of job that impresses the ladies. It doesn't bother my daughters, but my wife often purposely forgot to mention it in conversation. I could tell it was bothering her. Do you like what you do? Yes, and I'm good at it. The server brought more coffee and cleared the table. Mr. Simmons, I realize you've only known me for a short time, but I believe that first impressions are very important. Very briefly, what is your first impression of me? The question put me in an awkward position. If I answered honestly, I might push her away, and if I tried to butter her up, I was sure she would see right through it and think I was a liar. What to do? What do I do? In short, I see you as beautiful, intelligent, educated, and confident. Her head was tilted down slightly and her eyes were looking up at me. I noticed a small smirk. I was hoping for candor. I'm sorry, but we were having such a pleasant evening, I didn't want to spoil it. Do you really have such a bad opinion of me? I don't want you to resent me. Maybe that's why your wife left you for another man. If you hadn't always tried to please her, your marriage would have been stronger. It was harsh, but I have to admit there was some truth to it, Miss Rothberg. I believe you are cunning and manipulative. You use your beauty and charm to get what you want. You are used to getting your way and I feel you are a bit of a spoiled brat. You play with men but are afraid of commitment. From the looks of it, you know how to make money and spend and invest it wisely. If you weren't so obsessed with wanting to prove that you're as good as any man, you'd probably make a good mother. I felt uncomfortable after saying that, but she made me angry with her comment about my marriage. For a few moments we just sat there staring at each other. Do you really think I'd be a good mother? The mood suddenly improved dramatically during the short drive back to the condo. Things were pleasant again. I knew she had heard everything I said, but seemed to accept it without argument. She wanted the truth and I gave it to her. The fact that she wasn't upset made me feel better about being honest with her. My night as Letitia Rothberg's sex slave turned out to be a little boring. It's hard to have sex in separate bedrooms. That's okay because I wasn't expecting anything anyway. The next morning I got up first and found a breakfast of fruit danishes and hot coffee waiting for me, along with a copy of the Wall Street Journal. The wind had died down and I enjoyed relaxing on the balcony overlooking the Caribbean. I could get used to this. Letitia joined me about 20 minutes later and jokingly snatched up part of the paper. We sat in silence, reading and sipping coffee as if we'd been doing it for years. I had known this woman for less than 24 hours, but everything about her was natural and comfortable. I'm afraid my phone doesn't work here, and I really want to call my daughters. Letitia held out her cell phone to me. Be my guest. Cindy, it's Daddy. Where are you? Is everything okay? Cell phone says London. I'm in the Caymans and everything is fine. I just thought I should let you know, since I didn't go straight home, that I'm staying with a friend. I had to use her phone. They showed a picture of you on TV last night. They showed you getting on an airplane with Letitia Rothberg. What the hell are you doing with Letitia Rothberg? It's the friend I'm staying with. What's the big deal? Why are you with her? Everything's fine, nothing insidious is going on. I don't understand your concern, Dad. That woman is a barracuda. She eats men for breakfast. Letitia was bringing a tray of breakfast from the balcony as she walked by. I couldn't resist. This is my daughter Cindy, she's in New York. She told me to be careful because you're a barracuda. Sure enough, Cindy heard me say this to Letitia and let out a loud groan. Over the phone. I could make out Cindy and Sandy discussing something quickly on the other end. Why are you there? How do you know her? When are you coming home? Before I could answer any of her questions, Letitia was already standing with her hand outstretched, waiting for me to hand her the phone. Hi, Cindy. It's Letitia. Your father told me about you and your sister. I'll be in New York tomorrow and would like to have lunch with you too. Where can I pick you up? Of course. There was no way I could have known the other side of this conversation. Who is this professor? Pause. No problem, I'll pick you up from the classroom at 11. Okay, I'll tell you goodbye. Bye. Letitia gave me back my cell phone. Your daughter said goodbye, I'll have lunch with them tomorrow. I promise to be nice, even though they think I'm a fish. She giggled lightly and wiggled her and went to her room. An hour later we were at the Federal Reserve Bank of the Cayman Islands. Under the experienced guidance of my hostess, I set up my first offshore bank account. And 20 minutes later, I saw that my new account had been credited with $4 million from Towers and Burns. I figured that was a fair price for 215 pennies. After dinner, she asked a friend to take us to feed manta rays. At dinner, I asked her why she worked for a firm like Towers and Burns and learned that she owned 60% of the company. What else can you tell me about yourself? Apparently you're a major player on the global financial scene, and I'm embarrassed to say that I don't know anything about you. I was born and raised in London. My father is Israeli and my mother is Turkish. I have an MBA from Columbia University. I am not married, but I have been engaged twice. I haven't had a serious relationship in over 3 years. I've learned not to trust men who show interest in me. I guess you could say I'm cynical, but I feel like most of them want something from me but have nothing to offer in return. That's unfortunate. I was hoping to get a ride back to the condo. Does that mean you don't trust me? You need to take this seriously, you big jerk. I'm sorry if I came across as insensitive. I didn't mean to be. I guess it's hard for me to relate to your problem. I'll try to be better. Okay, let's relax. We have a party to go to. We ended the evening at a cocktail party at a major hotel. Everyone knew her and treated her like a celebrity. I spent the evening trying to remain even more inconspicuous than I was. I was still wearing the street clothes I had worn in New York. I had not supposed that I was to travel to the tropics. At first Letitia seemed obliged to accompany me, but I persuaded her to enjoy herself and let me blend in with the tree where I felt comfortable. She did her best, but for most of the night she constantly checked on me. Anyway, I found myself chatting with a couple of Hispanic gentlemen, cattle ranchers from Argentina. The conversation started with soccer and then moved on to fishing. At least the conversation was in English, I suppose for my benefit. One of them remarked how attractive Letitia looked, not knowing that I was her chaperone for the evening. I felt a little flattered. My contribution to the chatter consisted mostly of smiles and nods. I wasn't knowledgeable enough about any of the topics to add anything of substance until Ramon Duarte brought up the topic of investments. He was interested in winter wheat. I listened as he explained in detail why he was going to invest a lot of his money in something he obviously knew nothing about. I got the impression that he was pretty rich and I was a little confused as to how he did it. I usually pride myself on having a poker face. But I guess I failed at it this time, Mr. Simmons. I can see by the look on your face that you disagree with me about investing in winter wheat. I was caught. I was supposed to remain invisible and inaudible. My invisibility cloak failed me. I'm sorry, Ramon. I'm afraid I'm not an investor, and I don't understand the complexity of this case. I called him by his first name because I was uncomfortable addressing him formally. Maybe so, but I have a feeling you have an opinion on the matter. I'm going to pester you until you share it with us. I was trapped. I tried to feign a small smile. I need a fresh drink. For the next hour, the two gentlemen listened intently as an Alabama greengrocer explained that the excellent winter wheat crop in Alberta and Saskatchewan would more than compensate for the poor harvest in the States. The Canadian Grain Board has leased all available in North and South Dakota to store the surplus and has even reserved rail cars of grain for short-term storage. Within a week, winter wheat futures will begin to fall and will continue to fall until the market stabilizes. Both Canada and the States will be forced to unload wheat overseas. I was running out of clever words when Letitia came up. Raman and his friend were flattered that she joined our little group and were genuinely surprised when she grabbed my hand and led me away. What the hell was that, Gary? We were just talking about food, about groceries. She smiled slightly at me as we left to head back to the condo. The next morning we flew back to New York, where a group of photographers were eager to capture her arrival. A courier from Towers and Burns handed me a small package containing the coins I had left behind. Letitia and I said our goodbyes and I headed to the commuter train terminal to fly back to Huntsville. The divorce and the sale of the house went according to plan. Phil Williams from the main office left me several messages asking me to call him. They again asked me to consider moving to the company's headquarters in New York. This time I agreed. John Smurd also left a message he wanted to meet for lunch. I tucked myself away in my locker at work and wished my shifters good luck. There was a picture in the paper of Clayton and Marcy at a barbecue. For a local politician, they looked like the perfect couple. It took me a full day to scan and identify all the coins in the bag from New York. With 3 weeks to go, I decided to put them on eBay as soon as possible. Everything should be fine, just as long as they didn't get caught by any scumbags. It took a full day to post the coin ads and prepare all the envelopes and blank stickers for shipping. All the money went into my PayPal account and from there to my new offshore bank. Now I had the weekend to relax. My Friday lunch with John Smurd was interesting. John was extremely pleased that I had gotten Clayton involved, but was unhappy that I'd gotten nothing out of the deal, explaining that to him would have been too difficult. Lunch went fine, and before he left he gave me the deeds to 5 acres of land on the outskirts of town. He and his wife were leaving for Florida and he wanted to get the house in order before he left. No good deed goes unrewarded. Shortly after John and I parted ways, my cell phone rang. Cindy and Sandy were arriving in Nashville in 2 hours. I had plenty of time to pick them up. Airfare to Nashville was half the price of airfare to Huntsville, and the girls were on a budget. I had no trouble getting there and picking them up. Cindy couldn't wait to talk about lettuce. The lecture hall was hosting an advanced corporate finance course for over 300 students. In the middle of the lecture, the professor stopped to introduce Letitia to the students. She just appeared as if she owned the place. She spoke to the class for about 10 minutes and then announced that she needed 2 students for lunch at the Westin Hotel. We couldn't believe it when she called our names. So you liked her? She's amazing, Dad. How the hell did you manage to meet her? Well, she said she was looking for a sex slave and I was her first choice. Sandy tapped me on the shoulder. This isn't funny. Be serious. Okay? What did you talk about at lunch? She asked about our classes and schoolwork. Sandy chuckled lightly. She had a lot of questions about you. In fact, Cindy and I agree that she was interested in more than just friendship. I'm 10 years older than her and a couple of dollars poorer. I'm sorry, girls, but she's totally out of my league, Daddy. She can have any man she wants. Why? You think about it and give us a clue. From our point of view, you're perfect. But Letitia Rothberg doesn't know you like we do. Apparently, your mother didn't know me either. Everything went quiet for a few minutes. My remark about the mother sounded like a punch. It was not my intention to turn my daughters against their mother, and I regretted saying what I did. I'm sorry, girls, that didn't sound right. Your mother is a wonderful woman and I have no right to say that. Don't worry about it, Dad. We understand more than you think. All was quiet for a few miles, and then just as we crossed the Alabama state line, Sandy's cell phone buzzed. Hello. Pause. We arrived about an hour ago. Everything's fine. Pause. You're kidding. Pause. That sounds great. I'll tell him. Thanks for the call. Bye. In the rearview mirror, I noticed Sandy giving Cindy the thumbs up sign. What was that? Sandy leaned over the front seat of the car. Guess what, Daddy? Letitia is coming to Huntsville Tuesday morning. She said you have to pay her for the night and that she expects breakfast in bed. I was flattered to hear the news, but I felt pressured by Letitia and now my daughters. It all sounded wonderful and I hoped I was up to the task and not just this one. The weekend with the girls went great. They spent Saturday afternoon with their mom but didn't get to meet Clayton. I asked them not to mention lettuce. We sorted out all the things they wanted to leave at the house. By the time they left, we had it all sorted out. I made an upfront payment to store the stuff until they finished school. As we drove back to Nashville, they made me promise to try to be companionable with Letitia. When I asked them what they meant, Cindy said just don't make her mad. That was simple enough. They were excited about my move to town. I still didn't understand what Letitia needed from an old man who didn't even own an Armani suit. When I got home, it was time to relax with a beer in the Sunday paper. There were no pictures of Marcy and Clayton this week, but there was a short story about Keystone Development having trouble financing a local project. Winter wheat futures had fallen in value for a record time. This was interesting. I called Terry Davis and asked him to come over. It wasn't lunch, but I figured we could talk over a couple beers. Clayton Manning had a mixed past, to say the least. For the past few years he'd been either broke or in great wealth. He'd spent a lot of time moving to get ahead of creditors and friends who lent him money. His new project began to fail. The people and investors who supported him were disappearing. I don't remember beer ever tasting so good. Monday morning turned out better than one might have expected. The coins I put up for auction sold much better than I expected. Cookson estimated the value of the coins at about $300,000. It didn't look like they would go that high, but they may well have gone over $200,000. In a little over 2 weeks, I will be a free man. 3 months ago this would have seemed like a disaster, but today I was looking forward to it. The people who bought the house had negotiated the financing and were ready to close the deal. I thought it was funny that Marcy felt so comfortable with Clayton that she didn't need any of our joint possessions. I wondered if she realized how slippery her future was. At 3 o'clock I had a meeting with the people who bought the house. A check for $200,000 went immediately into my offshore account. They had no objection to me staying in the house for another week. It suited both of us. The next morning, I received a phone call before I had even had my coffee. An unknown person officially notified me that Miss Rothberg would be arriving at 10:45 a.m. on Delta Flight 724. I arrived 30 minutes early. Yes, I was a little worried. Anyway, several paparazzi had gotten wind of her arrival and were waiting outside the terminal. I tried my best to be inconspicuous. I parked my car in the short-term parking lot because I wasn't expecting so much attention. Instead of waiting for me to pick her up, she chose to walk with me behind the car. Of course, the photographers remembered my license plate number and the cat jumped out of the bag. I'm not used to such a fuss, but Letitia didn't seem the least bit embarrassed by it. She apologized to me for it on the way home. I couldn't help but remember that as she was getting off the airplane, I wanted to kiss her. Stupid old man. I was embarrassed by the sparseness of the house. Over the past few months, I had gotten rid of everything I could. The only things left were the necessities that the new owner had agreed to take responsibility for after I left. My guest seemed amused by my attempts to apologize. There was nothing in the house to eat, so we made a quick stop at the local Taco Bell. Her choice. I promised her Dreamland ribs for dinner. It was nice to be around a woman with a healthy appetite. Letitia, I'm glad you're here, but I don't understand why I assumed you'd be back to business. This is business, silly. I understand you're moving to New York next week. You need a place to stay and I have a spare bedroom. I'm here to help you pack a truck. We'll be here tomorrow morning to move anything you can't fit in the car. Just no furniture, please. How did you know I was moving? That's what I do. If I keep my eye on the little things, the big things come by themselves. It's a load of crap, but that's what I've always wanted to say. Are you conspiring with my daughters? I tried to grin innocently at that, but it was hard for an old man to appear sly. Her offer was unexpected, but I couldn't think of a single reason to refuse it. Sure, now let's get some boxes so we can pack. I thought she would have been more comfortable sitting in a boardroom or a bank somewhere. But she seemed to enjoy just talking to me. But I still felt a little awkward about the age difference. We ended up throwing out more stuff than we had packed. She had an opinion about my closet, and she refused to listen to my pleas for mercy. Once I was settled in New York, she promised to take me to the store to get some appropriate clothes. When we were done, there were more boxes than could fit in my car, but not enough for a moving van. I hope she'd ordered a small truck. I set aside my laptop and small inkjet printer to attend to an eBay auction. We were just getting ready for dinner when a new surprise awaited us. A delivery van was parked in front of the house. Letitia and I watched the driver in a smart uniform get down from the cab with a clipboard. Are you Gary Simmons? Yes, I have a delivery for you. Where do you want it? What the hell is this? The car? It's from Mr. Ramon Duarte. Is there room in the garage? The spot in the garage where Marcy's Volvo used to be was empty. I pointed in that direction and nodded. I noticed Letitia put her hand to her mouth and giggled. I don't know for sure, but I think she was amused by my bewilderment. 5 minutes later I was looking at a shiny orange sports car standing next to my outdated Volvo. What the hell is this? With great pride, the courier said this is a 2008 Lamborghini Gallardo Spider Superleggera model. Isn't it the most beautiful thing you've ever seen? Letitia could barely contain her laughter. She wasn't loud or anything, but she was definitely enjoying herself. I signed the shipping form for the fancy uniform to go home. I had no idea what I was going to do with my gift, but I knew I wasn't going to take it with me to New York. Get in the Volvo, little Miss Funny Pants. My guest was still smiling as we pulled away from the driveway. I ordered a full rack of ribs and 2 Fosters. Could you explain what's going on with the car? Ramon stocked up on winter wheat. Everyone thought he was crazy. When the price started to drop, he started doubling contracts. In less than a week, he made over $40 million. He was happy with the money, but he was thrilled with the comments he received about his smart move. Well, good for Ramon. I hope he didn't mention my name. He wanted to pay his respects to you, but not without your consent. He thanked me for bringing you to the party and asked for your address. However, I didn't know he was going to do that. The ribs arrived and I watched, mesmerized, as Letitia dipped a few of them into Tabasco and then got down to business. God, I love that girl. You know I'm going to send it back in the morning, don't you? That's what I thought. Don't worry about it, Ramon won't take offense. He would have gladly offered you the money, but he probably figured you'd refuse. That way you'll feel more obligated to keep the money. We had to order a few more beers because of the Tabasco. I felt good and I didn't want to go home. At that moment, I would have given anything to spend the night in bed with this beautiful young vixen. I envied the suave, debonair, lovable guys who could get any girl in the world into bed in 5 minutes. The best I could hope for was a good night kiss. We couldn't talk all night, so eventually I was forced to go home. The next morning was wonderful. All my worries were in vain. As soon as we entered the house, Letitia took me by the hand and led me to the bedroom. Since I was a true gentleman, I did my best to make sure her needs were met first. As a reward, I was rewarded with the best night of sex of my secluded life. Breakfast in bed consisted of juice, coffee and Danish. I'm sorry, but under the circumstances, it's the best I can do. He's as good as I could have hoped for. Trying to eat off a tray in bed is very uncomfortable. After a few giggles and rearrangements, we retreated to the kitchen. Breakfast in bed. Sounds neater than it is, Letitia. I don't want to spoil the mood, but I'm really curious as to why you chose me. I don't have much to offer and you deserve so much. I've been burned many times by slick debonair boy lovers. I won't fall into that trap again. I see I'm attracted to you because I'm not a trickster or a debauchee. My guest found this amusing and laughed a little. Gary, I was impressed with the deal you made with James in New York. I just sold some coins. Not that it's silly. I found your proposed agreement to purchase trust land intriguing. Do you consider me a philanthropist? Oh, not at all. I see you as a cunning who took advantage of a unique situation to mess with his wife's lover. Of course. This brought a smile to my face. I was amazed at how smart she was and how well she hid it. Was that wrong? No, Gary, that was brilliant. I was impressed and wanted to know more about you. You couldn't possibly know what I was doing in New York. I knew what you did, but I didn't find out the reason until days later. You were checking up on me. Of course I'm not a fool. I have to admit, the boost in self-esteem was refreshing. Unfortunately, Letitia was taking an early morning flight back to New York. I hated to see her go. She left me with a happy heart and the key to her apartment. The Lamborghini dealer couldn't come to collect the car until the next day. It was okay because I wasn't going to drive it. The movers came with a small truck and picked up my stuff to go to New York. Terry Davis called and told me that Keystone Development was in serious financial trouble. It seemed that Clayton had mysteriously lost almost all of its supporters. And almost overnight there were rumors that some people were picking up markers that Clayton had not received. That evening I was visited by my almost ex-wife. To what do I owe this unexpected pleasure? I could not refrain from sarcasm. I need to talk to you about some things. I'm leaving in a few days, but I'll help you in any way I can. I was going to take my old Volvo, but I noticed it was gone. What's that orange car in the garage? Things were starting to get interesting. I'm sorry, Marcy, when you said you didn't want your old Volvo. I sold it back to the dealer. He may still have it if you want to check it out. I'd never heard Marcy use that term before. The orange car was a gift, but I'm going to return it tomorrow anyway. I can't imagine myself driving something like that. The sticker on the window said $225,000. Who would give you a gift like that? Your new girlfriend? No, it was a cattle rancher from Argentina that I helped a few weeks ago. It was just to show my gratitude. So what else can I do for you? There was a pause in the conversation. I realized that Marcy wanted to say something but didn't know how to do it. Would you like something to drink? I have beer and diet sodas. No, I can't stay long. How did you even get here? I don't see a car. I took a cab. Gary, you said you were leaving in a few days. Is it okay if I stay in the house for a while? The house is sold. We closed the deal yesterday and the new owners will move their stuff in this weekend. They're letting me stay until Friday, but that's it. What's wrong with the apartment by the river? She did not answer that question. There was a brief lull, and then she asked what happened to the money you got for the house. Things were getting really interesting now. I was starting to like that. The conversation was getting on the right track. It's all gone. You clearly said you didn't want anything. The money I used to set up a new apartment for my move. Where are you moving to? New York. I got a promotion and a big raise. I should be there on Monday. I wasn't going to tell Marcy that I was going to live with Letitia. I also wasn't going to tell her about the bank account in the Caymans. You never told me what happened to the apartment. It was only leased, the lease expired and the owner didn't want to renew it. Where do you live now? We're staying at the Holiday Inn until Clayton picks up a new place. Oh, I see, now I understood why she wanted to move into our old house. Marcy looked a little confused. She wanted to ask for help, but she didn't know how to approach it. I realized she was in trouble. There was a lull in the conversation again. Is there anything else I can do for you? Could you give me a ride to the Holiday Inn? The first half of the trip went smoothly. I understand you have a girlfriend. Tell me about her. She's not really a friend but more of a business partner. What kind of business? You're not doing any business. You're right. I'm just a grocery store clerk. I can't fool you, can I? Marcy was silent. She was looking out the window and I heard her whisper to herself. This was the moment when I could vent all my frustration. It was the perfect opportunity to let her know how much the pictures in the papers hurt me. But instead I just smiled to myself. She was in a bad way, and I redeemed myself. I felt bad for a moment, but it passed quickly. I dropped her off at the motel entrance. She left without looking back or saying goodbye. I hated to say it, but I felt a sense of satisfaction. The week was shaping up nicely. Thursday morning I unexpectedly received the final divorce papers. They were early, but who am I to complain? On the front page of the Huntsville paper was a picture of Letitia Rothberg arriving at the airport. Your sincere friend was holding her hand. A copy of the newspaper is delivered free to each room at the Holiday Inn. Marcy can read it at breakfast. I was sure Clayton would explain to her who Letitia was. I emptied the safety deposit box at the bank. My 7 pennies will come in handy in the near future. I thought Letitia would ask about them while she was here, but she never once broached the subject. All our conversations were strictly social. If she was interested in me for business reasons, she never pointed it out. I set a buy it now price on all the coins in the auction. More than half of them were sold at that price. I spent the rest of the day packing up the coins that were sold and preparing them for shipping to the post office. The rest of the auction had to close by noon on Friday. If all PayPal payments went through, all coins would be mailed the same day. Any unscrupulous buyers will have to wait until Monday. Early Saturday morning, I was on my way. Most of the money from my PayPal account was transferred to my Cayman account. I also left a small amount on PayPal in case I saw something I just had to have. The people who bought the house drove up just as I was leaving. It was a win-win for both of us. The trip in would take about 12 hours with no delays. Letitia was in the apartment and promised to prepare a home-cooked dinner for my arrival. I wondered who would cook it. It was good to know that I was still man enough to win the heart of such a beautiful woman. I had no doubt that I could fulfill all her expectations. I was just crossing the Virginia state line on Interstate 81 when Cindy called. It seems Clayton Manning had skipped town and left Marcy with no car, no place to live, no money and a hefty motel bill. I asked Cindy what she thought I should do. She laughed and replied, "As I sit to share my story, the keyboard feels cold under my fingertips, each tap echoing the tumult in my heart. I am 39 years old, a number that once seemed a distant future, now a present filled with complexities I never foresaw. 17 years ago, I embarked on a journey of love and companionship with my spouse, a woman whose laughter used to light up the darkest corners of my soul. We crossed the threshold of marriage 14 years back, vowing to weather every storm our life, a tapestry of joy and challenges, has been blessed with 3 beautiful children. Our eldest daughters, now 15 and 12, bring a vibrancy and energy to our home, their youthful dreams and aspirations a source of constant wonder. And then there's our little boy, 3 years old, a bundle of joy who has faced more challenges in his short life than many do in a lifetime due to his disability. His resilience is a daily inspiration, a reminder of the strength that lies in innocence. But not all stories tread a path of unending happiness. Shadows crept into our lives uninvited, casting long, dark silhouettes that now threaten to engulf our very existence. It began subtly, for years ago, a seemingly innocent interaction with a colleague at work. We played a game of charm, an exchange of witty banter and fleeting smiles. In my heart, I knew it was a harmless dance of words, a momentary escape from the routines of life. Yet, in such moments, the lines between innocent fun and something more perilous can blur. There was nothing more to it, or so I believed. But the seeds of doubt, once sown, are hard to uproot. My wife, with her keen intuition, sensed the change. A month into this game, she confronted me, her eyes reflecting a storm of hurt and suspicion. She was convinced that my interactions had crossed the boundaries of our marriage. The trust we had nurtured over years trembled under the weight of her conviction that I had her with my colleague. The irony of fate is cruel, for as I grappled with her accusations, a secret lay buried in the shadows of our shared life. A secret that would, a month ago, come to light in the most heart-wrenching of ways, shattering the remnants of trust that had struggled to survive. I discovered that since the end of 2021, she had been entwined in the arms of another. A betrayal that spanned until June 2023, with a man who, like me, had pledged his life to another. The revelation tore through me, a searing pain that threatened to consume my very being. She confessed, her words a mix of remorse and desperation. She claimed her love for him had withered away, that she had awakened to the realization of how deeply I loved her and, in turn, recognized her own love for me. But her words, once a source of comfort, now felt like hollow echoes in a void of despair. For 20 months, she had crafted a world of lies. Each time I voiced my doubts, she looked into my eyes, eyes that once held nothing but love for her, and spoke of her undying love and fidelity. Yet, in the shadows of our life, she whispered the same declarations to her lover, in our very bedroom, a sanctuary of our love now tainted with betrayal. I stumbled upon her secret world, hidden within the confines of a Snapchat account. It was a window into a reality I never knew existed. Photos of him in stages of undress, images that seared into my memory, each one a betrayal. There were photos of his intimacy, his everyday life, and most painfully, images of him in the sanctity of my bedroom. Her deception ran deeper. To him, she spun tales of a loveless marriage, of nights devoid of passion. Yet, the truth was far from this. We were still entwined in love each night, a reality she masked to maintain a facade in her dual life. I couldn't let the lie stand. It was essential to me that the truth be known, for our nightly embrace was real, even as her heart wandered. I confronted her, and in a moment of forced honesty, she admitted to her lover the reality she had so skillfully hidden. Today, I find myself in a labyrinth of emotions, turning in circles, seeking an exit that remains elusive. She professes her love for me, her desire not to lose what we have built. Yet she admits her inability to understand why she ventured down this path of betrayal. Her confession of that first physical encounter haunts me a mere 10 days of conversation, and she had succumbed to him. In their first meeting, she crossed a line that now scars our history, a moment of infidelity that she tries to justify as a quest for a confidant, a misguided attempt to regain confidence. She assured me it was never about the physical attraction. Yet, the intimacy they shared, described in her reluctant confessions, paints a different picture. Her words, once a soothing balm, now feel like salt on an open wound. She sought comfort in his embrace, believing she would never see him again after their encounter. But the reality was different. She reached out to him again, the very same night, a contradiction that baffles and hurts me deeply. In this turmoil, I find myself lost, navigating a sea of emotions that threaten to engulf me. I love her more than anything in the world, and she claims to reciprocate these feelings, insisting that her heart no longer yearns for him. But the shadows of doubt and betrayal loom large, making it hard to see the light of truth. I grapple with feelings of being less than nothing, a mere pawn in her game of deception. The notion that she might still be manipulating me, treating me with disdain, gnaws at my soul. It's a bitter pill to swallow, this realization that the person I held in the highest esteem could betray me so callously. In this labyrinth of broken trust and shattered dreams, I seek solace in sharing my story. Perhaps there are others who have walked this path of heartache, who have felt the sting of betrayal or the guilt of infidelity. It is to these souls I reach out, hoping to find a semblance of understanding, a shared experience in this journey of love, loss, and the elusive quest for forgiveness. As the night deepens, the silence of my study weighs heavily around me. The screen's glow is the only light in the darkness, a beacon in my quest for clarity and peace. Here, in the quiet, I pour out my heart, seeking solace in the anonymity of the internet, a place where my story is just one among countless others, yet a story that is uniquely mine, a tapestry of love, betrayal, and the search for redemption. As dawn breaks, casting a soft light through the curtains of my study, I find myself lost in a sea of memories, each wave crashing against the shore of my present reality. The second chapter of this story begins, not with joyous fanfare, but with a quiet, haunting melody that speaks of forbidden dances and unintended consequences. It was a time when life seemed predictable, comfortably nestled in the routine of family and work. Yet, amidst the familiarity, a desire for something different, something thrilling, silently grew within me. It was during this phase that she entered my life, a colleague, her presence at the office as ordinary as the files we shared and the coffee breaks we took. But there was something about her, an allure that, at first, I dismissed as a fleeting fancy. Our interactions were casual, the usual office banter that fills the hours between meetings and deadlines. Yet, as days turned to weeks, I found myself drawn to her vibrant personality, her laughter echoing in the corridors long after she had left. It was a game of charm we began to play, a dance of words and glances that seemed harmless. A joke here, a compliment there, the language of flirtation spoken in hushed tones and half smiles. In my heart, I believed it to be a harmless diversion, a brief respite from the ordinariness of life. There was an unspoken agreement that it was nothing more than playful interaction. Or so I thought. I was blind to the thin line we were treading, unaware of the silent storm brewing in the horizon of my marriage. It was a mere month into this dangerous waltz when the music stopped abruptly. My wife, with her perceptive eyes, saw through the facade. One evening, as we sat in the quiet of our living room, the children asleep in the world outside at bay, she confronted me. Her voice was calm, but her eyes, those windows to her soul, betrayed a tempest of hurt and betrayal. She accused me of crossing a line, of betraying the sanctity of our marriage. In her eyes, My harmless game was a dagger to her heart. I tried to explain, to assure her that it was nothing, that she was the only one I loved. But the seed of doubt, once planted, is a relentless sprout. Her trust in me, once unshakable, now stood on a fragile foundation, shaken by my thoughtless actions. The irony of the situation was not lost on me. In seeking a momentary escape, I had unknowingly opened a door to a world of pain and mistrust. A door that, once opened, revealed the cracks in the facade of our seemingly perfect life. The truth was, our marriage was not immune to the wear and tear of time and routine. Beneath the surface of our daily interactions, unspoken resentments and unfulfilled desires simmered, waiting for a spark to ignite. In that moment of confrontation, I realized the gravity of my actions. The flirtation, trivial as it seemed, was a betrayal of the vows we had taken. It was a wake-up call, a realization that I had taken for granted the love and trust we had nurtured over the years. I vowed to make amends, to bridge the gap that my folly had created. But little did I know, the dance was far from over, and the music had only just begun to play a darker, more painful tune. In the weeks that followed, our home became a battleground of unspoken tensions and forced smiles. We were like two actors in a play, performing our roles as parents and partners, while the undercurrent of mistrust and hurt flowed beneath the surface. It was a delicate balancing act, one that required patience and understanding from both sides. Yet, in the midst of this turmoil, I remained oblivious to the storm that was brewing in her heart. A storm that would soon break the levees of our marriage, unleashing a flood of secrets and lies that would change the course of our lives forever. The days that followed were steeped in a silence that spoke louder than words. Each glance, each touch, seemed to echo with a question, "What now?" My heart ached with a guilt that was as heavy as the air in our home. Our conversations, once filled with laughter and plans for the future, had dwindled to mere necessities. The vibrant tapestry of our life together seemed to fade into shades of gray, the colors of trust and love washed away by the tide of doubt and suspicion. But life, as it does, continued its relentless march. Our children, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing in their parents' world, continued to fill our home with their laughter and innocent chatter. They were a balm to our wounded hearts, their presence a reminder of the love that had once been the cornerstone of our marriage. In the midst of this strange tranquility, my wife carried a burden I was yet to understand. Her smiles were fewer, her eyes often lost in a distant thought. It was as if she was fighting a battle within, a struggle she kept hidden behind a veil of normalcy. Little did I know, her heart harbored a secret, one that would soon shatter the fragile peace we had managed to uphold. The revelation came on an ordinary evening, the kind that had become our new normal. The children were in bed, and the house was wrapped in the stillness of the night. It was then, amidst the quiet, that she spoke the words that would change everything. She had been unfaithful. The confession struck me like a bolt of lightning, searing through my heart with a pain so acute it was almost physical. Since the end of 2021, she had been in the arms of another man, a man who, like me, had a family of his own. The affair had spanned over a year and a half, a secret life she had led while I remained oblivious, consumed by my own guilt and efforts to mend our strained relationship. The room spun around me as she continued, her voice a mere whisper. She spoke of the end of the affair, which had concluded just a few months prior. Her words were laced with regret and confusion. She assured me that her feelings for him had dissipated, that she had come to realize the depth of my love for her, and in turn, recognized the love she still held for me. But her confession was a labyrinth of contradictions. She spoke of love, yet her actions spoke of betrayal. She talked of realizing my love, but only after seeking solace in another's embrace. The woman I had loved for nearly 2 decades, the mother of my children, had become a stranger, her heart a land I could no longer navigate. For 20 months, she had woven a tapestry of lies, each thread a betrayal of the life we had built together. I recalled the times I had expressed my doubts, my fears of losing her. Each time, she had reassured me, looking into my eyes with a conviction that now seemed like the greatest act of deception. She had pledged her love to me, even as she whispered the same promises to another in the shadows of our very home. The images she shared next were like daggers to my soul. Her secret Snapchat account, a hidden window into her affair, revealed photos and messages that painted a vivid picture of her betrayal. There were images of him, some intimately explicit, others capturing moments of their everyday interactions. The most painful were the ones taken in our bedroom, the sacred space of our marriage defiled by her infidelity. Her deception extended beyond the emotional and physical betrayal. To him, she had painted a picture of a loveless marriage, a narrative far from the truth. Our nights were still intertwined with passion, a fact she chose to conceal to maintain the facade of her double life. Confronted with this web of lies, I was compelled to seek the truth. The reality of our intimate life, contrary to her tales to him, needed to be acknowledged. In a moment of forced honesty, she admitted the truth to her lover, tearing down the illusion she had so carefully crafted. As I sat there, listening to her confession, I felt a profound sense of loss. The woman I thought I knew, the life we had built, all seemed like a mirage, dissipating before my very eyes. The future, once a canvas of shared dreams and possibilities, now loomed before me as an unfathomable abyss. In this whirlwind of emotions, I found myself at a crossroads. Her reassurances of love, her expressions of regret, all seemed to fade into the background, overshadowed by the magnitude of her betrayal. My love for her, a flame that had burned steadily for years, now flickered in the winds of doubt and hurt. As the night deepened, I grappled with the reality of our shattered relationship. The path ahead was unclear, shrouded in the fog of pain and uncertainty. In the quiet of the night, I found myself questioning everything, our past, our love, and the very foundation of our marriage. The journey ahead seemed daunting, a trek through the wilderness of broken trust and shattered dreams. In the days that followed, our home became a shell of its former self, a space where smiles were as rare as a calm sea in a storm. The revelation of my wife's affair hung over us like a dark cloud, its shadow touching every corner of our lives. The laughter of our children, once a source of pure joy, now echoed with a tinge of sorrow, a reminder of the innocence we were desperately trying to protect. The image of her with another man invaded my thoughts, a relentless assault on my peace of mind. The intimacy they shared, detailed in her reluctant confession, painted a picture too painful to bear. She spoke of their first encounter, a mere 10 days of conversation culminating in a moment of physical betrayal. Her explanation, a search for a confidant, a misguided attempt to regain self-confidence, did little to soothe the sting of her actions. Her words, once a melody that filled our home, now felt like a discordant note, out of tune with the harmony we once shared. She assured me it was never about physical attraction, yet the intimacy they shared belied her words. She had crossed a line from which there was no return, and in doing so, had changed the fabric of our relationship forever. I wrestled with a myriad of emotions, each one more overwhelming than the last. Love, anger, betrayal, and despair mingled in a tumultuous storm within me. I loved her more than anything in the world, and she claimed to reciprocate these feelings. Yet, how could I reconcile this love with the betrayal that now stood between us? The feelings of being insignificant, of being a mere pawn in her game of deception, gnawed at my soul. The notion that she might still be manipulating me, treating me as a fool, was a bitter pill to swallow. The trust we had built over nearly 2 decades had been shattered, leaving me to question everything I thought I knew about her, about us. In the midst of this chaos, I found myself reaching out for answers, for experiences similar to mine. Perhaps in the stories of others, in their journeys through the pain of betrayal and the struggle for forgiveness, I could find a semblance of understanding, a guide to navigate this uncharted territory. The house, once filled with the warmth of our love, now felt cold, the walls echoing with the unsaid, the air heavy with the weight of our unshed tears. We moved around each other like ghosts, each lost in our own world of pain and confusion. As I lay in bed each night, staring at the ceiling, the silence around me was deafening. The questions that haunted me during the day followed me into the darkness of the night. What did the future hold for us? Could we ever find our way back to each other? Or had the chasm created by her betrayal grown too wide to bridge? The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with the debris of broken promises and shattered dreams. Yet, in the depths of my despair, a flicker of hope remained. A hope that perhaps, through the pain and the heartache, we could find a way to rebuild, to forge a new path from the ashes of our old life. But for now, I was lost, a ship adrift in a stormy sea, searching for a beacon to guide me home. As the days turned into weeks, the initial shock of my wife's confession began to settle into a deep, aching sorrow. Our house, once a haven of love and laughter, had become a stage where we played our roles as parents and partners, all the while nursing our private wounds. The children, ever perceptive, sensed the change in the air. They tiptoed around our sadness, their innocent eyes filled with questions they were too afraid to ask. It pained me to see them caught in the crossfire of our turmoil, and I made a silent vow to shield them from the storm as much as I could. In my quest for understanding, I turned to those who had walked a similar path. I sought out forums and support groups, places where strangers shared their stories of betrayal and heartache. Each story was a mirror reflecting my own pain, and yet, in their experiences, I found a strange comfort. There was solace in knowing that I was not alone in this journey, that others had navigated these treacherous waters and found their way to the other side, whether that meant reconciliation or parting ways. My wife, for her part, seemed to be grappling with her own demons. She fluctuated between expressions of remorse and moments of withdrawal. There were times when she reached out, her words a tentative bridge trying to span the chasm between us. Yet, there were also moments when she retreated into a shell, her eyes a well of unspoken thoughts and feelings. Our conversations, when they happened, were a delicate dance around the core issues. We talked about the children, about mundane household matters, but the elephant in the room remained untouched. The affair, her reasons for straying, my own role in the unraveling of our marriage, these topics were like live wires, too charged to handle. In my heart, a battle raged between the love I still felt for her and the hurt that her betrayal had inflicted. The images of her with another man haunted my thoughts, a relentless reminder of the trust that had been broken. And yet, amidst the anger and the pain, there was a part of me that still yearned for the woman I had fallen in love with, the partner with whom I had built a life. The irony of it all was not lost on me. I, who had once flirted with danger, now found myself on the other side of the fence, nursing the wounds of a much deeper betrayal. It was a sobering realization, one that forced me to confront my own imperfections and the ways in which I had contributed to the fissures in our marriage. As the weeks turned into months, I realized that the journey ahead was not just about dealing with her infidelity. It was also about introspection, about understanding the dynamics of our relationship, and about deciding whether the foundation we had built was strong enough to withstand this storm. Our home had become a reflection of our inner turmoil, a place where love and pain coexisted in uneasy silence. The future, once a well-defined path, had become a maze of possibilities, each turn leading to unknown outcomes. In this uncertainty, I clung to the hope that through honest communication, through understanding and forgiveness, we might find a way to heal. Whether that meant rebuilding our life together or finding peace in going our separate ways, only time would tell. But for now, I was a man adrift, searching for a beacon of hope in the fog of betrayal and heartache. The journey of the past few months had been like navigating through a dense fog, each step uncertain, each breath heavy with the weight of unspoken words and unresolved feelings. The house that once rang with the music of our family's laughter now whispered with the echoes of our pain and confusion. In this final chapter of my tale, I stand at a crossroad, a point where decisions must be made, paths chosen. The reality of our fractured marriage lay before me, a puzzle whose pieces no longer seemed to fit as they once did. My wife, a woman I had loved with every fiber of my being, now appeared as a complex enigma. Her confessions, laced with remorse and regret, were like threads attempting to mend the torn fabric of our trust. Yet, the scars of her betrayal remained, deep and raw, challenging the very essence of my forgiveness. The journey had forced me to confront the depths of my own emotions. The love I felt for her was now entwined with a sense of betrayal, each memory tainted by the revelation of her affair. I grappled with the haunting images of her infidelity, struggling to reconcile them with the life we had shared. Our conversations had slowly evolved, no longer just skirting the surface but delving into the deeper, more painful realms of our hearts. We spoke of our fears, our desires, and the myriad ways in which we had both faltered in nurturing our bond. These talks were not easy. They were laced with pain, tears, and sometimes silence that spoke louder than words. I realized that healing was not a destination but a journey. It was about coming to terms with the past, accepting the imperfections in ourselves and each other, and deciding whether our love was resilient enough to weather this storm. Amidst this turmoil, our children remained our anchor, their innocence a constant reminder of the love that had once been the foundation of our marriage. Protecting them from the brunt of our issues was a priority, even as we navigated the complexities of our relationship. As I reflect on the path ahead, I am acutely aware that the choice I make will not only affect me but also the lives of those I hold dear. The options lay before me to rebuild from the ruins of our shattered trust or to embark on separate journeys in search of individual peace and fulfillment. This crossroad is not just about deciding the fate of our marriage. It is about understanding the transformative power of forgiveness, whether it leads to reconciliation or a respectful parting. It is about recognizing that sometimes, love alone is not enough to heal the wounds of betrayal, and that sometimes, letting go is an act of love too. In this moment of introspection, I find myself seeking guidance not just from others but from within. The answers, I know, lie in the depths of my heart, in the quiet whispers of my soul. As I stand at this crossroad, the future remains a canvas of uncertainty. But I am ready to take the first step, armed with the lessons learned from this journey of love, betrayal, and the quest for forgiveness. And so, with a heart heavy yet hopeful, I close this chapter of my life, ready to embrace the new beginnings, whatever